There's a moment in Final Fantasy X when Yuna calls forth Valefor for the very first time. The music swells, the wind howls, and this majestic winged creature descends from the heavens like a guardian angel. You watch in awe as it lands beside her, loyal, powerful, and obedient. But you don't know the truth yet, that Valefor is a person, that every Aeon in Final Fantasy X was once a living soul. That behind every spell, behind every overdrive, behind every victory is someone who chose to give up their life so someone else could carry the burden. In most Final Fantasy games, summons are the power fantasy, but in Final Fantasy X, they're a tragedy. They're not just summoned, they're sacrificed. So today we're going to be talking about every Aeon in Final Fantasy X, their origins, their meanings, and why they represent one of the most heartbreaking systems in the series' history. In the world of spirit, Aeons are not mythical gods or wild beasts, they're dreams, given form through ancient magic. They come from faith, people who, at the end of their lives, chose to give up their souls to Yevon's teachings. In doing so, they enter eternal sleep, where their memories and their will can be summoned into the waking world as Aeons. They don't age, they don't awaken, they dream forever. These aren't just spells Yuna casts, they're people she's borrowing. And it's not a choice to be made lightly. Every faith is someone who believed in the cycle, believed that giving up everything, even their own afterlife, was worth it if it meant peace for Spira. But as we'll see, that peace was built on something rotten. The first Aeon Yuna receives is Valefor. From her home temple of Besaid, sleek, bird-like, and elegant, Valefor feels like freedom in motion. It has two overdrives suggesting choice and versatility, mirroring Yuna's first steps on her own pilgrimage. It's easy to miss how personal this Aeon is. The faith of Valefor is a young woman, serene, silent, and unnamed. But if you read the visual language of Besaid, you realize this Aeon represents Yuna's connection to home, to safety, and to innocence. And by the end of the game, even that is something she has to let go of. In demonology, Valefor is a Duke of Hell. He tempts people to steal, and he's in charge of a good relationship among thieves, but later, he brings them to the gallows. Ifrit appears after the horrors of Kilika, a town decimated by sin. This version of Ifrit is primal, hulking, and wrathful, not the typical demonic trickster from earlier Final Fantasy entries. He represents not just fire, but resilience through rage. And the faith behind him? Another crusader and believer lost to the teachings, now serving an endless cycle in the name of redemption. In Kilika, the people turn to ritual, they pray, they perform the sending, but Ifrit reminds us that sometimes rage is the only thing left when faith fails. In Arabian mythology, Ifrit, pronounced Ifrit, I'm pretty sure, is the name given to a class of jinn. These are demons that embody fire. Though they could live for thousands of years, they weren't immortal, and if cut, they would kind of bleed, the fire running through their veins until it consumed their bodies. Next comes Ixion, born of the Jose Temple, a lightning-clad unicorn with a bolt-shaped horn. Ixion stands tall and rigid, a creature of discipline and control. Ixion's faith is that of a sailor. It's easy to overlook him, but his very design, part sacred beast, part electrical executioner, suggests judgment. Like the teachings of Yevon, he's beautiful on the outside, but merciless when wielded. Ixion is the Aeon of unquestioned loyalty. And as you get deeper in the story, you start to wonder, what happens when loyalty becomes obedience, and obedience becomes blindness? Ixion was a king of the Lapiths, an ancient tribe of Thessaly, and the son of either the god Ares, Antion, or the notorious evildoer Phlegius in Greek mythology. Probably pronounced every single one of those wrong. Ixion was summoned to the table of the gods, but rather than being grateful, He immediately tried to seduce Zeus's wife Hera. Zeus stopped them and then tested Ixion by trying to seduce him with a fake Hera made from a cloud. Ixion slept with her and was later punished by being strapped to a flaming wheel that flew around the world forever. Meanwhile, the fake Hera gave birth to the centaurs, thus the reason why Ixion is portrayed like a horse-like creature. You've seen Shiva in other Final Fantasy games, but not quite like this. In 10, Shiva is still elegant, blue-skinned, barefoot, and graceful, but there's a sadness in her design. She's not confident or flirtatious. She's kind of quiet. Her faith lies in the frozen Makalania temple as a Makalanian princess. The temple is a place already starting to decay. Her overdrive heavenly strike sounds poetic, but the emotion behind it feels like controlled grief. Shiva doesn't speak, but her sorrow kind of echoes every time she fades away in a burst of frost. She's the Aeon of sacrifice without complaint, the patron saint of burying pain beneath silence. Shiva is a Hindu god. The Hindu Shiva once saved the world by consuming poison, giving him blue skin around the neck and throat. Shiva is a male god, but can merge with his consort Parvati to become Ardhanari, an androgynous Hindu god of duality. Shiva is the god of destruction along with Vishnu, who's the god of preservation, and Brahma, the god of creation. Together they are the three principal deities of the Hindu triad. It's believed he periodically destroys the world, then recreates it. Shiva has many different human forms, males and females, but when he's in his avatar form, he spent most of his times in the Himalayan snow mountains. Shiva in the Final Fantasy series is likely inspired by one of his female avatars. In Bavel, the heart of Yevon, we meet Bahamut. Not through battle, but through a child. This is the first faith you speak to directly. He's just a boy, but his voice carries weight, far beyond his years. He knows the truth about the final summoning, about Yevon's lies, and yet he still offers his strength. Bahamut is power, yes. His mega flare can level cities, but he's also an innocent, caught in a lie, a child who gave his life to a cause he no longer believes in. And somehow he still chooses to help Yuna. Bahamut originated as an enormous whale in ancient pre-Islamic Arabian mythology. Upon Bahamut's back stands a bull with 4,000 eyes, ears, noses, mouths, tongues, and feet, called Kajuta. Compared with the pair of Behemoth and Leviathan, between each of these is a distance of a 500-year journey. On the back of Kajuta is a mountain of ruby. Atop this mountain is an angel who carries 6 hells, earth, and 7 heavens on its shoulders. Another version of the Arabic story is the Bahamut is indeed a dragon, and he stands on a whale called Lawash. In modern times, the game Dungeons & Dragons is responsible for sort of reimagining Bahamut as the king of dragons, a benevolent platinum dragon, the opposite of the malevolent Tiamat, the 5-headed chromatic queen of dragons. And hidden in a cavern of the stolen faith is Yojimbo. Summoned unlike any other, he's not given freely, he must be paid. In life, he was a warrior. In death, he's a mercenary spirit, fighting only for the highest bidder. If you want his power, you'll have to earn it, or cheat it. Yojimbo doesn't care about faith or fate. He exists to remind us that not all power is noble, and sometimes even sacrifice isn't enough. You'll have to pay again, and again, and again. When Yuna visits Yojimbo's faith to hire him as an Aeon, he calls himself Yojimbo. Despite this, a player can still rename him. Yojimbo means bodyguard in Japanese. In kanji, it also means the word like sword or service for hire, kind of befitting his payoff system. Yojimbo is depicted as a samurai. Samurai were the military nobility of medieval and early modern Japan. They weren't just great swordsmen. They were also powerful horse archers and martial artists of other fields. Though their status was above commoners, samurai were bound to forms of etiquette and a way of life known as Bushido, stressing honor to one's devoted and preparing oneself in the face of death. Within samurai spirituality, while it was often thought for many samurai to be reincarnated as Ashura or to continue living lives of carnage and violence by their karma, many legendary samurai from Miyamoto Musashi, Kamizuma Nobutsuna, and Tokugawa Ieyasu were believed to have ascended and were deified as gods or Buddhas of swordsmanship and Bushido for using their craft for good. Daigoro's Aeon form resembles a Komainu, a type of yokai that resembles a mix between a lion and a dog that serves as a guardian. FYI, I butchered so much of that pronunciation. I'm not going to be learning Japanese anytime soon, I'll just say that. And then we have, in the Remium Temple, the Mage's Sisters. They are strange, whimsical, and chaotic. They don't always listen to your commands, but when they do, they obliterate everything in sight. Cindy, Sandy, and Mindy, 3 sisters who serve together in harmony most of the time. But behind their silliness is something poignant. They died together. They chose to become a faith together, and now they exist in tandem forever. They represent unity and sacrifice and a rare glimmer of warmth in a story otherwise drowning in sorrow. Magus is the Latin word for wizard. Its plural is magi. I'm sure we all have heard of that. The Magus Sisters in Final Fantasy X are named after the trio of bosses that appeared in Final Fantasy IV. The special attack Razzia and Kamisade have origins in military tactics. Razzia comes from Arabic, meaning raid, and Kamisado is a surprise raid on an enemy force during sleeping hours. Kusado is a fencing skill, a forward lunge with an epee or rapier. Anima is the most horrifying Aeon in the entire game. You find her in Baj Temple, a sunken ruin tied to Seymour's past. To summon her, you must acquire the half of her soul that lies in sorrow. Why? Because Anima is Seymour's mother, a woman who turned herself into a faith, hoping her son could use her power to be accepted, to do good. Instead, her pain became a monster. Anima is chained, shrieking, and tortured. The Aeon of regret. She's what happens when sacrifice is made for the wrong reasons and when love turns into desperation. She is in many ways the final form of the cycle Yevon created. Anima is a feminine Latin and Italian noun for soul or breath. Ancient Romans believed that one's anima resided in the chest. When a person died, his or her soul escaped from the body with the breath. Anima was associated with emotion and heart. Its metaphysical counterpart, animus, was manifested in the brain and in one's sense of logic. In Jungian psychology, the anima can be defined as 2 things. One's inner self, which is in contact with the subconscious as opposed to one's outward persona, and the subconscious, yet partially conscious female psychological qualities, which Jung said reside in all males and is usually an aggregate of a man's mother, but may also incorporate aspects of sisters, aunts, and other important female figures. Anima sola, or lonely soul in Roman Catholicism, is usually pictured as a soul in purgatory who has chains that bound her wrists, which when broken means she has repented for her sins. The Anima sola requires not only divine assistance, but also the help of the living. And finally, we have the final Aeon. The Aeon you never get to summon, actually. To defeat sin, a summoner must create the final Aeon, a being born from the soul of someone they love. A friend, a guardian, someone willing to become the weapon. In Yuna's case, it would have been Titus, or Orin, or Kamari, or Lulu. Someone would have to have died, not just physically, but completely, to create the only force strong enough to bring the temporary peace. But it ends there. Because the Aeon then becomes Sin's next vessel and the cycle starts all over again. In the end, Yuna breaks that cycle, but not before every other Aeon is lost, willingly destroyed to stop Yu Yevon once and for all. And with them, all the dreamers finally rest. Final Fantasy X gives you power, but it also makes you feel the cost of using it. Every time Yuna raises her staff, she's calling on someone who once had a name, a face, a life. And every time you win a battle, it's with the help of someone who chose to give up their afterlife so that the world might have a future. These aren't just summons, they're reminders that belief is powerful, that sacrifice can be beautiful and tragic, and that sometimes the things we think are saving us are only delaying the truth. So now I want to hear from you. Which Aeon story hit the hardest? Which kind of backstory, I mean like real life backstory, do you think is the coolest? I love like the whole Anima, Jungian kind of aspect to it. And also Anima is just the coolest summon in the game to me. But which one do you think is the coolest? Which one do you think has the coolest backstory? Would you have become a faith to save the world? Me, I want to say no, but I do have a daughter, so I think I would probably, if we lived in Spira, I would probably say yes to save the world or give it some peace for a time. Yeah, maybe I would. And do you think Yuna ever truly forgave herself for calling on the dead to fight her battles? Let me know in the comments. I read every single comment. If you want more deep dive into lore and just my take on all the lore in these RPGs, don't forget to just subscribe and go into the lore playlist. I have all different kinds of stuff there. We really get into the nitty-gritty of the stories and characters and themes that really stick with us. Thank you for watching. And remember, not every miracle is a blessing. Some are born in silence and sleep forever. Have an amazing day, and God bless.